The anime begins with Shigeru, who, due to his ugly face, suffered bullying from everyone, but he grew accustomed to it. Then, we see him confronting his boss at work, who wanted him to cheat customers for greater profits. However, Shigeru refused and insulted his boss, which enraged him. The most important thing for Shigeru was his customers. Despite his ugly face, people loved and respected him because of his good treatment and kind personality. Unfortunately, he wasn't popular among women due to his appearance, but he was content with his life. One day, while riding the train, a woman falsely accused him of harassment. He tried to deny it, but no one listened, and he was thrown off the train, losing his bags in the process. Here, he suffered again because of his ugly face. Due to the incident, he was put on trial. Shigeru decided to confess to the crime to avoid severe punishment, thinking it was the best option. He was fined 300 yen and assumed the matter was over. However, this marked the beginning of his curse. Shortly after, he received a dismissal letter from work, leaving him miserable and bankrupt. Later, he learned that the woman who accused him had been arrested for doing the same to many others, but she was released without punishment because she was a minor. This infuriated Shigeru, but he could do nothing about it. Shigeru headed to a job interview and saw children bullying a small child in a wheelchair. He could only mutter, "How ugly this world is." At the interview, he found himself struggling to communicate and becoming nervous around others due to the false accusation. He became an outcast because of the crime and his ugliness. 6 years passed, and he remained at home, miserable and broke, unable to do anything. He had exhausted all his resources until the day he browsed the internet and found discussions about myths of transferring to another world. Some people wondered how to deal with this world. Shigeru dismissed it as impossible and unreal. Then, he followed the method to transfer to another world, opening his window, pointing his device north, standing in the window with his hands raised at exactly 2:00 a.m. When he did this, a message appeared on his device confirming his transfer to another world. He began exploring and found that he would be reborn in the other world at age 16, where he could set his attributes. When he reached the appearance window, the default was 5, but he set it to 255. In exchange, he received 13,000 experience points for making his appearance ugly. He concluded that the more he sacrificed and worsened his attributes, the more experience points he would gain. He even made it so he couldn't touch women or form relationships with them, deducting many points if he did. By adding numerous disadvantages, he gained an additional 100 trillion experience points, an astronomical number no one had ever achieved. A countdown window appeared, and Shigeru vanished from his world. He woke up on a bed in another world, thinking it was a dream. When he looked in the mirror, he was shocked by his ugliness, but remembered it was his choice. Then, 3 others appeared, a man and 2 women. Shigeru was embarrassed to see them. They introduced themselves, all in the same situation. 16 years old and transferred from their worlds. They found a place with clothes, weapons, and some money, but were puzzled to find only 7 gold coins, which couldn't be divided among 4. Shigeru recalled he had reduced his savings, which was the reason. He tried to please them, saying he didn't want the money. Sika, one of the girls, accepted this, but Seiji didn't. He said it was unfair and advised Shigeru not to please others at his own expense in this life, or he would fail again. Shigeru was stunned by Seiji's words, but Seiji apologized, explaining he might have been talking about himself unintentionally, as he had struggled with selfishness and communication issues in his past life. Shigeru thought Seiji was lying, wondering how someone like him could have communication problems. Seiji hoped to avoid his past life's issues in this one, and advised everyone to use this chance to do the same. They agreed to divide the loot using rock, paper, scissors. Unfortunately, Shigeru lost and ended up with a wooden stick. Seiji tried to lighten the mood by having everyone shake hands, but Shigeru refused because he couldn't touch women without severe penalties. Of course, no one knew this. The others got along well, ignoring Shigeru, who could only think about how he had sacrificed his appearance this time for extraordinary stats. While Seiji was searching the map for a nearby location, he came across a village called Aria and informed his team they would head there. Shigeru, on the other hand, was planning to part ways with them during the journey. As they were about to open the door, they encountered a small monster. Seiji swiftly charged at it, delivering a decisive blow that ended its life. However, they soon discovered that a large number of monsters were waiting for them outside. Seiji believed they could handle the situation thanks to their arsenal of weapons. He instructed Sika to prepare her bow and asked Shigeru to support her. He ordered Rizo to head north, while Seiji took the right flank. They began their attack, and Seiji and Rizo managed to eliminate some of the monsters, but Sika struggled to ready her bow, feeling frustrated for choosing this particular weapon. Shigeru noticed she lacked the necessary experience to use it. Sika asked him why he wasn't joining the fight, to which he replied that it was easier said than done. However, as he spoke, he was suddenly struck from behind by one of the monsters. Seiji urged him to take charge, but Shigeru failed to defeat the monster, his attacks proving too weak. The monster seized the opportunity and attacked, forcing him to flee in fear. Sika saw Shigeru as utterly feeble. Shigeru was hit again and knocked to the ground, feeling as though his fate in this second life was no different from his first. He remembered that his weakness stemmed from not allocating his bonus points before the deadline. But just as the monster prepared to deliver the final blow, Shigeru managed to block it and counter with a strike that killed the monster. Immediately, a message appeared, notifying him that his level had risen after slaying the monster. Shigeru's level increased by 31, and Seiji and Rizo's levels also rose. Rizo asked how to distribute her points, and Seiji advised her to focus on strength and endurance. However, Shigeru didn't receive the same pop-up windows as the others' only private messages. He allocated his points unconventionally, assigning 1,000,000,000 points to every skill. As a result, Shigeru transformed into a great lord with immense power. Another monster attacked him, but he remained unaffected. Deciding to test his strength, he struck one of the monsters. The blow was so powerful that the monster vanished into the sky, leaving behind the legend of the Great Lord's birth. Meanwhile, Sika was still unsuccessfully trying to ready her bow. Seiji and Rizo continued slaying monsters, but Shigeru couldn't bear seeing Sika helpless. He pretended to suffer from bowstring syndrome, claiming the bow was speaking to his mind and demanding he string it. He begged her to let him do it, and she handed him the bow immediately. Shigeru recalled the videos he'd watched during his seclusion, along with his 1,000,000,000-point manual dexterity skill. He effortlessly strung the bow, astonishing Sika, who asked if he was a member of an archery club. Shigeru vaguely confirmed it. Sika insisted he fire the first arrow, and despite his hesitation, he eventually agreed. Shigeru selected the required skill and fired the arrow, but it didn't head toward the monsters. Instead, it soared into the sky, opening a massive magical circle from which a giant dragon emerged and attacked the monsters. The entire team was stunned, and all the monsters were wiped out. Sika asked what had happened, but Shigeru simply replied that he'd been in an archery club. Sika declared she would take charge from then on. But soon, another group of monsters advanced toward them. Seiji asked Sika to prepare and cover their rear, so she stepped forward and unleashed a volley of arrows but missed every target. Seiji and Rizo decided to attack the monsters directly. Sika felt frustrated and useless. Shigeru noticed she'd exhausted her arrows quickly and felt shocked and saddened for her. He used an arrow regeneration skill, turning wood into a large supply of arrows and placing them beside her. Then he told her she had more ammunition, but Sika didn't learn from her mistakes, firing another futile volley. Shigeru realized it was hopeless. Seiji continued eliminating monsters, and Rizo informed him they'd completed the mission. Seiji suggested they could now head to Aria City, and Shigeru assumed he'd stay with them until they arrived. When they reached Aria City, Rizo pointed out a hamburger restaurant, expressing her craving for French fries. They all headed to the restaurant except Shigeru, who decided this was the right moment to say goodbye. He sat alone on the edge of a fountain, feeling extremely hungry. A cat approached him, and he almost touched it but then remembered it might be a girl, costing him 10 points if he did. Suddenly, Sika appeared before him, causing him to fall into the fountain. After stepping out, Sika showed him a hamburger and offered it as a reward for helping her string the bow. Shigeru felt that Sika was kinder than he had imagined. Meanwhile, Sika thought that since he was broke, he had nothing to lose by accepting the offer. Shigeru was extremely hungry and reached for the hamburger, but accidentally touched Sika's hand. This resulted in a powerful electric shock that caused him to lose an enormous number of points and intense pain. He lost 58 trillion points, enough to kill every person on Earth. Sika felt sad because she had bought the food for him, but she realized he hadn't meant to do it. Shigeru reflected that his earnestness in helping had made him the best salesman ever. He apologized and told her that her beauty was the reason his hands trembled, and that he would gratefully accept the food even if it was dirty. As he reached for the hamburger again, Sika stopped him. She told him she would bring him another meal as a replacement, and apologized for being too beautiful. Shigeru thought this might be her own food, but she didn't mind she was rich. She added that she hadn't just helped him string the bow but had also found the arrows and returned them to him. Shigeru was surprised she had noticed, having assumed she was a spoiled girl who wouldn't pay attention. He took the food and began eating. At that moment, Seiji and Rizo appeared, calling out to him, which annoyed him, but he decided to stay with them until he could repay Sika, then part ways. Sika and Shiguro went to the weapons shop where Sika bought a lot of arrows for her bow. Shiguro was shocked by the number of arrows because he could produce the same amount or even more through his ability. Then Sika asked Shiguro if he wanted her to buy him anything from this shop. Was it because he was broke? Then Seiji and Rizo came over and told them they found a new inn and would be spending the night there, but Shiguro planned to spend the night in the park. Sika offered to pay for his room, but Shiguro refused because he felt it wasn't right, which embarrassed Sika. She asked him if he refused because she was the one paying, but Shiguro told her that wasn't the reason. Then Sika grabbed to move towards the inn, and Shiguro realized that touching the clothes didn't cause any harm, but he felt confused. He went with her, and then we moved to the inn where Seiji had a problem due to a lack of money. Then we shift to Shiguro's room, where he was thinking that he couldn't take on more debt, but he was broke since his income had dropped to 10,000. He would be stuck in this situation unless he found a steady income, because if he was stuck, he could get into big trouble that might force him to flee from this world he had run to. Then they gathered together, and Shiguro provided them with a lot of food, which surprised them. He did this because he couldn't eat it all by himself. Seiji asked Shiguro where he got the food from, but Shiguro told them it was a gift from a kind person, saying he mimicked a company employee on the last train of the day. Sika then asked about the company employee, but Shiguro realized she didn't know what it meant, which was good. However, Sika told Shiguro that begging was inappropriate even if he was poor, and suggested that if he needed money, he should just ask her since she was wealthy. Then they thanked him for the food, but in truth, Shiguro had bought it. It became simple after he figured out the rules and realized it was called swapping. He had made the arrows through his ability, then took them to the weapons shop, asked for 40% of the selling price, and got items in return. He thought his method of persuasion was aggressive, but he had now paid off all his debt to Sika. After that, Seiji showed them the map to discuss their next mission, but Sika wanted to explore the country more. However, Seiji thought they should first establish a source of income and that the monsters left no money behind. He pointed them to a cave near the city, saying he would check it out today. Sika thought that was great, but Rizo disagreed, finding it dangerous. Then a stranger appeared and asked if they were going to the Arga cave, and if they needed a guide, mentioning he was newly manifested like them. Shiguro looked at him, but the stranger said he hadn't seen Shiguro's face before, and asked if they had just arrived. Seiji confirmed they had just arrived, and Shiguro noticed Seiji's caution. Then the stranger showed them some cards, and asked if they knew what they were, which made Sika excited to learn about these cards. Shiguro saw how innocent Sika was. The stranger put the cards on the table and told them these were items they would find in the first cabin, granting them a one-time discount at the inn. Sika felt disappointed because she wanted that item, but the stranger told her she could get it now, and asked her to go retrieve her money from the reception. Sika almost did this, but Seiji asked her to stop, believing this offer was too good to miss. Then Seiji asked the stranger about himself. The stranger introduced himself as Kyoshiro, and his job was to guide newcomers like them. He offered his services, saying they would get a better deal. Shiguro felt Kyoshiro was suspicious and probably lurking around newcomers, but if something happened, he had the power of a great monster. Then Seiji thought about it and saw they weren't rich, but if this was an investment to enhance their knowledge and experiences, it was fine. He offered Kyoshiro 120 rira plus a bonus, asking if he accepted this offer. Kyoshiro agreed to Seiji's proposal, and they got ready to head to the Arga cave. However, a group of monsters appeared heading towards them, and Sika shot arrows at them, but as usual, she couldn't hit them. Then she asked Kyoshiro to save some arrows, but Sika didn't worry about the arrows because she had plenty. However, Kyoshiro meant she needed to improve her aim, and asked her to imagine every arrow costing 100 million yen, which made Sika think even the wealthy would be careful. Then Sika aimed again and succeeded in hitting one of the monsters, surprising everyone. Kyoshiro told her she wasn't bad, which made Sika feel jealous afterward, thinking she had now outperformed Shiguro with her shooting skills. Then Seiji asked them to move forward, but Shiguro didn't expect Kyoshiro to guide them so efficiently. But that's normal for a former merchant, alongside the skepticism about job offers, and he was the one who suggested these helmets, made by someone who also just manifested. Sika didn't have the patience and wasted 60 rira. Then they began training in combat. Kyoshiro started giving Seiji several tips, and also provided Rizo with advice. Sika was on the other side training her archery. Kyoshiro asked Shiguro if he wanted to join them, but Shiguro didn't have a suitable skill. Kyoshiro felt it was hard to raise his stick level, but Shiguro was already at level 61. However, Kyoshiro told him not to lose hope, and mentioned he heard stick skills were exceptional. Shiguro agreed, because he remembered when he went out at night to craft arrows, he encountered a huge monster, tried the stronger stick ability, and was surprised by its power. Everything would disappear within a 200-kilometer radius, and if he used it from Saitama, it would connect the Pacific Ocean to the Sea of Japan, and he immediately canceled canceled it. Then he returned to the present, and Kyoshiro reminded him to keep fighting continuously, or he would have to retire like him, sharing that he was once a member of a mercenary group and its leader. However, he had fallen behind due to a lack of skill, while that person rose through the ranks and became a king, reaching level 80 with a stat average of 160. But to Shiguro, this was very weak. Then Kyoshiro told Shiguro not to lose hope and keep trying. Then they headed to the Arga cave and entered, but Sika was paralyzed with fear when they moved inside. Sika was shocked by the limestone, but Kyoshiro warned her not to move too much to avoid knocking over the rock, which annoyed her. She then asked Shiguro about her age due to her behavior. Then Seiji asked Sika about her real-life age. He thought that information was crucial for strategic planning, making Shiguro happy from this question, while Sika hesitated to tell her age. Seiji clarified he had 30 years of real-life experience, which shocked Shiguro. Then Sika finally told them her age wasn't 16 but 17. They continued walking, and Seiji asked Sika if she was ready for college entrance exams. She confirmed she was achieving top marks. While they were exploring the cave, they encountered a group of bats before reaching the depths of the cave. Sika pushed forward to break through the door, but Kyoshiro asked Sika about her level. When he learned she was level 3, he realized that wasn't enough because this was a boss room, and she would die instantly, which scared Sika and made her fall back. Then Seiji thanked Kyoshiro for helping them reach this place. Kyoshiro shook Seiji's hand, saying he would become a good leader. However, before leaving, he told them about a special event before he went and asked them to follow him. Then they moved to the meeting room, and this room reminded him of bad memories. Sieg asked if he was the one who built this room, but it wasn't Kyoshiro. It was someone else who told them this place is safe, that monsters can't enter and magic can't penetrate. Now Shiguro thought he would discover Kyoshiro, and that there is no safe place within a 200-kilometer radius of the town of Aria, so this place isn't safe either. Then Kyoshiro offered them some sweets, and Sika thought it was a party. Kyoshiro confirmed it was a party for them since they had just manifested anew and reached this place. Shiguro discovered a sleeping potion at the edge of the drinks, which didn't seem to affect him, but Sieg understood this about Kyoshiro. However, he needed to return before sunset. Sika wanted to celebrate, and Kyoshiro thought he was overstating things and that he hadn't forced them to do this. He asked them to return to the town, where they would celebrate appropriately. Then Sieg apologized to Kyoshiro for doubting him, and for treating them well. However, Kyoshiro didn't care about this and told him he did what a leader should do. He offered him a drink, and Sieg took it, which surprised Shiguro with his behavior. They drank the beverages offered to them, but Shiguro tried to distract them and delay them by talking about what they were doing before coming to this world. This led to everyone being surprised by the question, but Shiguro immediately apologized since they were fleeing to this world. Sieg then asked them if they wanted to hear his past story. He told them that when he was in school, he got tired of everything and left home, establishing a company called Life of Success. Shiguro recalled that he visited this place and saw a resemblance between the manager and Sieg, but Sieg continued, stating that at the start of the company, a salesman came unannounced, named Y, trying to sell him an expensive copier. Shiguro realized he was talking about himself. Then Sieg went on to say he tried negotiating the price, but Mr. Y told him he would put a smile on his face and would never let him down, telling him that he was the boss and needed to learn to relax. This made Sieg affected by Mr. Y's passion, and he left management to his employees so he could go out and relax. After a while, the company grew and became publicly traded, but then he left his company, which went bankrupt, surprising them. The reason was a project involving artificial intelligence they developed, which caused a crisis for everyone who had an income and became mentally ill. He couldn't repay the debt to Mr. Y, who was the one who gave it to him. So when he came to this world, he swore he would never let anyone down. Then he told them that Mr. Y's name was Shiguro, and asked Shiguro to tell him his family name, but Shiguro said he was Sasaki and pronounced a name different from his real one. Then Shiguro lost consciousness and awareness. Kyoshiro was waiting for this with his other friends and told them they were very naive and easy targets, but Shiguro was awake and hadn't slept like them. They approached Shiguro and his friends and restrained them, but Shiguro remembered something he preferred to forget. However, Sieg woke up and warned Kyoshiro and his friends not to touch any of his friends, but Kyoshiro thought all Sieg could do was just stand and try to hinder their path. But he was grabbed by one of Kyoshiro's friends, and Kyoshiro told Sieg that he was wrong for trusting him and that he had surpassed him. But Sieg punched the man grabbing him until he was thrown away, and the thief almost attacked him, but Kyoshiro told him not to hurt him because it would lower the price. Here, Sieg discovered they were kidnapping people this way. Then he got up and told them that those who came to this world were broken from their previous world, being dropped while they were about to get a second chance. But Kiyoshiro thought this was the world where all failures came. However, Sieg promised him that if anyone touched his friends, he would protect them. But Kiyoshiro mocked him because he wasn't in the best shape and asked the other thieves to restrain him immediately. When they were about to attack him, Shiguro jumped high, landing on them, pushing them away from Sieg. Sieg told Shiguro that it was reckless of him, but Shiguro asked him to leave it to him. But Sieg wouldn't agree to let him fight alone. Then Sieg told the gang he was very strong and would take them out with one blow, surprising Shiguro. Then Kiyoshiro asked his followers to restrain them, and when they began to attack, Shiguro jumped on them again, but he took a hit from one of the thieves. However, he took advantage of that and fell on the rest of the thieves, and Shiguro was reassured since there weren't any girls among them. Then Kiyoshiro asked one of his followers to kill Shiguro, and Sieg told Shiguro to escape immediately. Then they attacked Shiguro, and Kiyoshiro thought they would kill him and tortured him, but Sieg asked them to stop, and his hands were glowing. He told them that this light would pierce through all evils, and if they were thinking of backing down, this was the right time. Kiyoshiro was surprised by this power, but Sieg wrote in the special note that he made a vow to never let any of his friends down, and if he did, he would pay the price. He obtained this power through the points he had gathered. Shiguro was surprised that he hadn't balanced his power and put everything into this power, but Sieg devoted this skill because when his anger peaked, it glowed red. He asked them to drop their weapons and leave, but the thieves laughed at him, saying they weren't afraid of his glowing right hand. But they left no choice to Sieg and insisted on fighting. Then Kiyoshiro struck at Sieg, but Shiguro blocked it and told Sieg to use him as a shield because the thieves outnumbered them and took the hit instead. But Sieg was shocked at Shiguro, wondering why he was doing this. However, Shiguro thought that in real life, his kindness was taken advantage of, but in another world, a person should be rewarded for their goodness. He hadn't escaped yet and asked Sieg to show them how to get the job done. Then Sieg used his power and transformed into the unbeatable hero Adeline.